Good afternoon. Today is August 1st, 2016. It is a meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. I am President Matthew Hale of the Commission. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Before I proceed with the roll call, Commissioner Chan and Commissioner Love will not be attending today's meeting. President Hale?
Here.
Commissioner Venetian?
Present.
Commissioner Camargo?
Here.
I believe that our next item is the consent calendar, which consists of our minutes from the June 6th and July 7th meetings of the Commission. Commissioner Avanesian and Camargo, do you have any amendments or changes, alterations?
No, I don't have any minutes. Just one typographical error, I think. So for the June 6th meeting minutes on page 2, under section B, the fourth... in the fourth paragraph there, just need to correct the spelling on Commissioner Chan's name. So delete the G. That's all.
So, Madam Clerk, if you would make that correction in the minutes and that reflected in the record, then I believe that we can approve those as amended and move on to agenda item number 3.
3. GWP Commission staff and comments.
Any comments from commissioners?
I have none.
Seeing none. Any comments from Mr. Abweg?
No comments.
Okay. Next item, please.
4. Reports. 4A, Renewal Portfolio Standards Update, Ramona Way.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I'm presenting to you today the current status of where we are with the RPS. Sorry, I'm looking for the remote so I don't have to nod. So, as you know, one of the things that we're trying to do, the biggest goals that we have overall, is we're trying to keep a balance between reliability, affordability, and sustainability. And this part really falls back. It addresses all three, but we'll focus mainly on the sustainability part of this report. So let me start with the resource mix. I believe you've seen this report before. This tells you how we've been serving the load. This is based on the actual energy that we serve the load here, the local load in Glendale. So you can see here the this doesn't show. So this shows you the total percent that we have coming from the different resources that we have. And it shows in that graph the different renewable resources we have. From Grayson, we have the landfill gas that we burn. We have the wind sources from Pebble Springs, Pleasant Valley, and some high winds that we bring in using our transmission. Then we have hydro coming from Tieton. And then we have several photovoltaic, including the Skylar agreement that we portrayed. And what you can see here, too, is that if you look at Grayson natural gas, Grayson used to represent about 18% of our total load because of the nature of the plant itself with its aging. We were relying on that less and less, and as you can see, it went from 18% down to 11%, if you remember last year's report. So in terms of the power content label, this compares what we reported back in 2014 as we reported now in 2015. This particular report is already posted in the Energy Commission website. And the big difference between last year and this year is we had less opportunity to purchase spot power for renewable energy. In 2014, we had several opportunities to bring in more spot resources that's green. But just you can see this year, or previous year, we went down about 11%. The biggest impact being we were buying more gas, but at the same time, there's a reduction in the wind that we're able to purchase in the spot market. That's really a big difference. And then there's some unspecified power that we purchase. It's called an unspecified, but what it does is We buy it in the spot market, but we do not necessarily attach attributes to that until it's actually delivered, and we negotiate what bucket that goes under. So the takeaway from this is we are meeting our requirement, the minimum that we need to supply for the year. We're currently at about 34%. And we're not required. We're only required to meet 20% at this time. So we're still long with respect to our commitment to deliver renewable. So along that line, this is the compliance period that we're looking at in terms of what we need to do in order to meet the state requirement. For the compliance period of 2011 to 2013, we've been on target, if not exceeding. From 2014 to 2016. The current requirement is 25%. As you can see, we are in 2015, we're at 33%. We anticipate to stay in that track through 2017 and 2020. There's some more graphs later that would show you where we are with respect to our compliance. And from 2021 to 2024, that goes up to 40% until 2030, where we have to start complying with the 50% requirement for renewable. So,
may I ask you a question, Mr. Abweg?
Please.
So with SB 350, does 350 allow for nuclear to be considered a renewable resource?
Unfortunately, it isn't.
Okay.
And I believe it should be, but it isn't considered renewable.
No. I agree.
So, and large hydro is also not considered renewable. That's still another issue that we're dealing with. So in terms of procurement, to show you where we are with respect to what we have committed to, what we have contracted with, as you can see in this graph, up to 2020, we are going to be meeting our compliance up to 33%. 2021, 22, we're pretty standard. There's a little gap that we have to meet, but the gap starts getting wider beginning 2024 to 2030. That's when we start ramping up from 40% to 50%. So we're doing what we can, and we are looking at contracts, both short-term and long-term, to fill the gap. I don't believe we're going to have a problem filling that gap because there are certain steps we're doing. We're always looking for opportunities to do that, both in real time and also in long term. So we're partnering with our sister cities in CAPA and trying to chop on any opportunities that we may have in order to bring in more renewable resources.
Would you please explain, when you say opportunity, what kind of opportunity is that?
Sure. So there may be some projects, some development projects that they may be doing somewhere in Wyoming or somewhere in Utah. And if we see that there's an opportunity to participate and we have no problems bringing it in using our transmission or contracting transmission, we would participate. One of the challenges that we have with renewable is being able to firm it up. So unless we can guarantee that we have transmission and we can firm it so we don't pay the penalties for not delivering it when scheduled, those are the opportunities that we're looking at. Okay? So we believe that at least for 2020, we're in solid ground and looking forward, those are the gaps that we're working on to fill. So we're currently in 2016, and we're looking forward 5-year hands in order to make sure that we will be in compliance by 2030. Any questions on this graph?
Yes. So I suppose it's not particularly on this graph, but your very first slide talked about the need to balance a few things, including cost along with sustainability. I recognize that you said you'd focus primarily on sustainability, but as you look at those out years and looking to fill the gap, I imagine that Glendale is competing with other entities that are also working to comply with the new law. Do you have an image at this point on what the impact on cost will be for getting up to that higher tier of renewables?
Yeah, fortunately, the cost of renewables, especially photovoltaics, is starting to come down. And so we think that with the advent of technology, that pattern will continue, and by that year, I believe there'll be more at least photovoltaic. Wind, on the other hand, it's a hit and miss depending on where it is. But PV and perhaps geothermal, we believe, will be the two big components that we can start counting on.
Okay.
So it's promising, in my opinion.
Good. Okay, thank you.
So here's the plan that we have. So the main thing is we will continue to try to diversify the different options that we have. And in response to your question, we are always looking for the least cost but best fit. And what that means is we make the renewables available to us, but we need to be able to call it firm power. So we're not borrowing, because the additional cost of firming it separately is a lot more than what we're buying. And so we're trying to find that balance. In terms of rec credits, we continue to bank what we can to build a surplus. So come 2020, we'd be able to use that to our advantage. To us, it's a big savings account. So we don't have to buy credits past 2020. So in terms of what are we doing in the future, we're banking on the proposed Grayson repowering. So currently, one of the quick steps that we can do here is if we can start generating locally at Shoal Canyon and burn the landfill locally, we can get full credit for renewables. As it is now, we're only getting 50% of what we produce from the power plant because of having to mix the gas that we burn. But if we continue to burn, or if we're able to burn at the landfill, we'll get 100% full credit for RECs. So that's part of the strategy that we're looking at. And we're looking at expanding our solar generation participation by our customers, as well as perhaps looking at community solar. We're starting to delve into that a little bit. However, real estate is a big issue for us in order to find that. And one thing that's new, I'm not sure if I reported to you, by the end of this calendar year, we're going to have a small-scale battery system, a 2-megawatt system that we'll be able to play with and figure out how that really fits into a resource mix. And that's something that we're excited about, and we're really looking into that. Going back to the local distribution, we have engaged a consultant. We are doing a cost impact analysis of what the local generation, the distributed energy generation will do to our costs and what that displacement means. Because one of the challenges that we have, although we have the local generation from the PV, we still have to have our own resources to back it up if something happens to those resources. So those are the things, going back to the battery, those are the balancing that we need to do, is so that we don't get penalized at the tie point that we have with the balancing authority, which is LA.
Mr. Abuego, another question for you. You mentioned looking to burn the gas at the Shoal Canyon facility. So are there technical hurdles that you would need to overcome in order to be able to do that? I guess maybe it's more of an assumption, was that part of the reason why you blend at Grayson is in order to bring up the quality, if you will, of the fuel. Are there challenges to being able to accomplish what you seek to do with Shoal?
Not on the technical side. There's a lot of reciprocating engines that we found that will burn the landfill gas without any problems. And one of the challenges in burning it in the big boilers or the big turbines that we have is it causes the unit to deteriorate a lot sooner because of the bad gas. So by separating that, not only do we preserve the investment we're going to make in the proposed plant so that it lasts longer, and by also taking advantage of the technology available there using smaller engines. So at the Shoal Canyon, we'll be using a lot more smaller engines. We're looking at 3 to 4 megawatts versus the 50 megawatt units that we're looking at the proposed Grayson plant.
This power generation, I'm assuming it is a gas turbine, right? Gas turbine generator?
For the Grayson, yes.
Okay. So this power station is located at landfill or somewhere else, closer to city?
It will
There?
it will be at the landfill
So,
location
but
itself.
then you have to transmit the power, right?
Correct.
So do we have right of way to transmit that? Do we have a transmission line for that?
Correct. It's not transmission per se. It will be tied to our distribution system. We have completed a system impact study as to how to size the generation plant and how we're going to bring it in without having to rebuild the power lines.
I see.
So we're in good shape with respect to the power system.
Thanks.
And that is a complete summary of where we are, just to demonstrate that we are on track to be in compliance up to by 2030, and we are committed to making that, bearing in mind that cost is something that we always need to watch out for. And I want to also debunk the myth that with all the renewables, we don't need the natural gas. We're actually relying more on the natural gas in order to firm up the renewable resources that's out there.
So I was actually going to ask a question about that. How is the Energy Commission treating battery storage systems with regards to the RPS portfolio?
We don't know yet. There's a new assembly bill that they're looking for us to make a commitment as to how much each utility is going to plan for in terms of the battery system. We don't know if they will treat that as a renewable yet resource.
It begs a lot of questions about double counting and where are you getting the power to put it in the battery, and then once you've put it in the battery, can you count it as a renewable? Because if you're putting coal power in a battery storage system, can you count that as renewable?
I don't know. But the main purpose for the battery really is to provide us more stability because of all the renewable resources that's out there.
Well, and that's why it kind of begs a lot of complicated questions, because let's say you're using it to firm and shape your in-basin solar, and you're offsetting your dirtiest peaking energy produced out of Grayson or one of your gas plants. That's a carbon offset, right?
Right.
That's so But if you powered up the battery using your imported IPP coal,
which we're not bringing in anymore.
Right, but just as a thought experiment, how
well, the theory.
What color are those electrons coming out of the battery after they've been in the battery, right?
Correct. But the theory is that because of the duck curve, that during the day when we're producing a lot of power, there's a lot more renewable resource than there is load in some cases. So,
yeah.
In theory, we can argue that that's being charged using renewable, but at the end of the day, we don't really know which electrons flow where. On paper, we can track it.
And even if it is being charged by renewable, then do you then get to double count it if you're using it to offset carbon later on for RPS purposes? Or do you treat it completely separately and apart from RPS and call it a completely separate bucket of resource?
Correct. I wish I could answer that question. It's still a 64,000 question that's out there. So. It
raises having done an RPS bill in the past, it raises a lot of really tricky kind of policy dilemmas that I don't really know, how to solve. But I'd be curious to know from a systems perspective what makes the most sense.
Correct. And the other issue too is the reliability component. At the end of the duck curve, a lot of the utilities, including us, we're concerned as to how we can respond as the renewable resources goes away, as the sun goes down. So that's really the biggest challenge we have, is at the tail of the duck curve.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that brings us to item 4B.
4B, 2016 Public Health Goal Report, James Sainz.
President Hale, Commissioners, my name is James Sainz. I'm here to give an update on the 2016 public health goals. And in compliance with the Health and Safety Code, the purpose of this report is to identify each contaminant detected that exceeds the applicable public health goal, to disclose that numerical value, to identify the category risk to the public health, and to describe a best available technology. Public health goals are non-enforceable health-based goal established by the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. All water systems that with more than 10,000 service connections are required to prepare a brief written report every 3 years, hold a public meeting explaining the report, and this report will cover the years 2013 to 2015. Compliance with public health goals are not required. PHGs are based solely on public health risk considerations. PHGs are the first step in developing an MCL, maximum contaminant level. Maximum contaminant levels are enforceable. Practical risk management factors such as analytical detection capability, treatment technology, benefits, and cost are considered when developing MCLs. And public health goals are not a maximum contaminant level. In this report, I will go over the contaminants detected above the public health goals in these 4 categories: microbiological, inorganic, organic, and radionuclides. For microbiological, I like to discuss the total coliforms detected in our system. Coliform bacteria are an indicator organism that are ubiquitous in nature and are generally not considered harmful. They're used as an indicator because of the ease of monitoring and analysis. If a positive sample is found, it indicates that a situation needs to be followed up with and investigated, and it usually is difficult, if not impossible, to assure that a system will never get a positive sample. During this time period from 2013 to 2015, a total of 5,772 samples, total coliform samples, were collected. During this 36-month period, the highest percentage of positive samples in a single month was during October 2014, with the result of 4.3% samples detected. That 4.3% translate to approximately 8 samples in that month out of 185 collected. Next, I'd like to discuss the inorganics detected in our system over the PHG goal: arsenic, hexavalent chromium or chrome 6, and nitrate. First off, arsenic. Arsenic is a metallic element and is both naturally occurring and released into the environment because of its use in agricultural pesticides and in chemicals for timber preservation. Arsenic was detected at our sources between 0.0011 parts per million, milligrams per liter, and 0.0014. Arsenic is sampled annually at all our sources, and these sources shown were the highest detected at each source. The category of risk associated with arsenic is people who drink arsenic over the MCL for many years could experience an increased risk of getting cancer. The numerical health value for ingesting water containing arsenic is 1 in 1 million if you were to drink 2 liters of water containing that PHG level for 70 years. So just imagine drinking 2 liters of water at 0.00004 parts per million for 70 years straight, and there's a 1 in 1 million chance that you would get cancer from drinking that water. Next, I'd like to talk about hexavalent chrome, or chrome 6. Much of the chrome 6 contaminated in California is due to industrial use and manufacturing of textiles. Here, you'll see that the detective ranges are 0.001 to 0.0073. The MCL for hex chrome has just been established last 2014, and it's at 0.010 milligrams per liter. The average hexavalent chrome results coming out of the Glendale water treatment plant are blended down to 0.0058 parts per million, or milligrams per liter. So this result that you see on the chart is the actual result prior to blending. Next, I'd like to talk about nitrate. Nitrate in drinking water at levels above the MCL can be a health risk for infants less than 6 months of age. Drinking water at levels above the MCL can interfere with the capability of an infant's blood to carry oxygen, resulting in serious illness. Symptoms include shortness of breath and blueness of skin. Now, the MCL and the PHG have been set at the same level. During this period, nitrate was detected above the MCL at Foothill Well at 11 milligrams per liter. GWP operates the Foothill Well and the New York Reservoir as a blending point. Now, according to our blending plan approved by the Division of Drinking Water, no blending result shall exceed 80% of that MCL. So no result shall be greater than 8 parts per million. And as a result, the blending average is about 3 parts per million. Next,
What's the source of the nitrate?
Source of the nitrate could be fertilizers, since this is at one time a high agricultural area. Just that use translates into to the groundwater. Over time, we've seen a big decrease in the nitrate levels in our water. Next, I'd like to talk about tetrachloroethylene, or PCE. There's one sample detected above the detection limit at 0.00053 at the blending unit. At the sources, they range from 0.003 to 0.0024. Category risks associated with people drinking water containing PCE above the MCL or increased risk of getting cancer. A numerical health risk is 1 in 1 million people drinking 2 liters of water every day at the PHG level. Next, I'd like to talk about the radionuclides. First one up is gross alpha. Gross alpha is associated with certain minerals that are radioactive and may emit a form of radiation known as alpha or beta radiation. Some people drinking water containing the alpha emitters in excess of the MCL over many years have an increase of getting cancer. There is no PHG for gross alpha. There is an MCLG, and MCLG translates to is the federal version of a PHG. PHG is California-based, MCLG is EPA, federal-based. The federal MCLG is 0. Gross alpha was detected at 5.1 picocuries per liter at the Glorieta wells and 3.62 picocuries per liter at Foothill Well. And these samples were collected during the years 2013. Now, uranium. Some people who drink water containing uranium in excess of MCL over many years have an increased risk of getting cancer. PHG for uranium is 0.43 picocuries per liter, and the MCL is 20 picocuries per liter. Uranium is detected at an average of 0.85 picocuries per liter at the Glorieta wells and 3.35 picocuries per liter at Foothill Well. Numerical health risk for ingesting water with uranium at the PHG is 1 in 1 million for 2 liters of water drank every day. Again, these were also sampled in the year 2013. Some of the best available technologies in minimizing the total coliform is to maintain a distribution disinfectant residual. We add chlorine to the water to prevent the growth of coliforms, and we we are required to maintain that level of chlorine in our system by the Division of Drinking Water. With arsenic and nitrate, best available technology out there, reverse osmosis, filter water through a membrane filter to reduce those levels. Again, nitrate, we have our blending plan in place that reduces those levels of nitrate extremely below the MCL. For PCE, granulated active carbon, granulated active carbon will absorb that chemical from the water, removing it completely. Also, aeration, which we use at our Glendale water treatment plant to remove PCE, down to nothing. Same with radionuclides, reverse osmosis, membrane filtration. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Seeing none, I think we can move on to the next item.
I'd like to make notice to one of our own, Ray Notario, Principal Water Quality Specialist for GWP, recently passed away last week, and he's been with the city since 1990.
The President Hill, I'd like to request that we adjourn today's meeting in honor of Mr. Notario.
That is more than appropriate, and just want to thank his family for the sacrifices that they've made in allowing him to serve the utility. And we'll certainly have a moment of silence and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
4C, drought and rates update, Michael DeGhetto.
President Hale, members of the Commission, my name is Michael DeGhetto, Assistant General Manager for Water at Glendale Water and Power. And I'm going to go ahead and give a water conservation update here in August. And what I wanted to start with was Glendale's success. So since going into Phase 3 of mandatory water conservation in May of 2015, GWP's customers have saved 2.3 billion gallons of water through June, compared to the same amount that they used in 2013. And that's quite an achievement. As part of that, Glendale met the original state-mandated cumulative conservation standard of 20%, and actually came in at 21% overall. And really, the drought of 2015 was unprecedented, and Glendale responded. So the state came up with a new methodology after Governor Brown issued an executive order making water conservation a California way of life back in June, and it's going to go from June through January of 2017. So the State Water Board, in response, established the new conservation methodology to prepare for 3 more years of drought. And urban and wholesale water suppliers needed to self-certify their own unique conservation standards. And that's taking into consideration, Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, we're all parts of MWD, we're part of this regional system. But there's a lot of agencies that aren't connected to MET throughout the state. So this new methodology helps take that into consideration. So the supply situation, based on that, in May, MWD's board of directors lifted their water supply allocation and implemented a water supply alert, recognizing that the state's still in a drought. But during conservation throughout the region and an increase in the state water project allocation to 60% of the requested deliveries, MWD's projections currently show that they're going to be able to increase water storage in their reservoirs for the first time in 4 years. So that's definitely some good news. So MWD was able to self-certify that they can meet Glendale's requested deliveries for the next 3 years. And GWP self-certified that we can meet our customer demands over the next 3 years. So based on that and the calls for continued conservation from the state, the City Council implemented Phase 2 of our mandatory water conservation ordinance, which is 3 days per week watering. So that's going to limit everyone to the days per week that they can water. And what that shows is it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, no more than 10 minutes at each station. And then, of course, all of our normal water waste policies always remain in effect, no matter what phase that we're in, which would be not watering when it's raining and not watering for 48 hours after it rains. Making sure that you're not watering the sidewalk, that you're watering your plants in your yard, and things like that. Not washing your car without a nozzle. You got to have a shut-off nozzle hose. Now, the other thing, that we took a look at as part of that was the Phase 2 drought charge. And that drought charge has been in effect while we were in Phase 3. The council temporarily allowed us to stay at that Phase 2 charge. But really, the Phase 2 charge is based on achieving a 20% reduction in use. And the projected reduction in Phase 2 is between 10 and 15% throughout the year. And I think, I showed some charts in the summer, say we were at 27% when we were in Phase 3, but in the winter, we might have dropped down to like 10 or 12%. So that overall, we think we're going to be in that 10 to 15% range. So in order to compensate for that, the council's temporarily lifting the drought charge from October 1st through February. So basically in the winter months, we're going to lift that drought charge, but keep it in place during the summer. And I did notice a news article that said lifted, but it'll be lifted when we get into October, and it'll be in place during the summer. And our numbers for July are looking right around that 15%, having gone back to that phase 2, with the 3 days a week watering. So, and as always, our webpage has a lot of good information about the kind of plants to put in to use less water, examples of how that looks. And then the kind of plants maybe that are good plants to plant. And then again, we've got whatever rebates are available and those sorts of things up on our webpage. Things for businesses, things for homes. And those are always changed. MWE has new programs and new things that come up, so it's always good to refer to the website. That's the in my report, if you have any questions.
At water conservation, how much income reduction we had for that conservation?
Well, basically, the drought charge helps make up for that. So it's an extra charge. If you look at your bill, you'll have your normal, say your normal monthly charge based on the size of meter you have. How much water you use and what tiers you're in. Each tier has a different rate. And then on the bill, it'll have the total amount of water you use and then the drought charge on top of that, which is 75 cents a unit right now in HCF. So we've been able to not have a reduction because of that drought charge. And that's what that drought charge is meant to do, is make up for that reduction in sales. So we've been able to more or less stay pretty constant on revenue. And again, that's why we looked at and recommended to council about temporarily lifting that in the winter months, because we think there's more, or we know there'll be more sales in the summer. So we'll have that drought charge, we'll be collecting that, and then we should be able to lift that in the winter and then come out even when it comes around to February.
So can I say that it means that all the water that we have more in reserve now, it has been paid by the people because of the drought charge?
In Glendale, no, so the point of the drought charge was to keep the utilities revenues constant, because a big portion of our fixed expenses, and I'm thinking about 70% of our fixed expenses are actually covered in our variable charges. So that drought charge is used to make the utility whole, to keep the right amount of revenue to just cover our fixed charges. So, and it doesn't include, so it's not extra related to the volumetric expenses that we have. So we purchase less water, purchase less chemicals and things like that on the volume related charges. So that drought charge just is making up that piece, that 70% of fixed charges that are in the variable. Is that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, let's move on to item 4D, please.
4D, Aliso Canyon update or review, Ramona Way.
So, unfortunately, since the last discussion that you had on Aliso Canyon, the special meeting dedicated to that, there hasn't really been any changes to that. Commissioner Camargo was asking me earlier what's been the impact, is that I believe that most of the generating companies, more of the utilities generators, we are sticking pretty close to what our projections are for our gas usage, and I believe that's the key in making this work, is that all the utilities take ownership and responsibility for scheduling their gas. During the last heat wave that we had, we did have some OFO, some operational limits that were presented, but we never really got close to reducing load or dropping any generation because of that incident. And I believe that there's about 46 wells that's been retrofitted, tested, ready to go. But unfortunately, with the current requirements or laws, they're still not allowed to withdraw or inject gas through those wells. But what I can say is we've had 2 heat waves since Aliso Canyon, and we've all managed to really match our resources with the load, so we're doing pretty well.
Any questions?
Just a comment. So, Mr. Abweg, earlier you mentioned, too, in our offline conversation that, 46 out of the 114, I guess the requirement is to validate that all 114 wells are prepared. But in the interim, you could, to your point, be able to tap into the wells that have been green-lighted, if you will, if an emergency takes place.
Yeah, if the governor allows us to do that, that's really, I think it would require an executive order to allow us to do that, because the way the bill was designed.
Okay. Very good.
I believe that moves us on to item number 5, please.
5, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The general manager may refer the matter to the appropriate staff for investigation and report.
Madam Clerk, I don't have any cards before me. Are there any cards at the desk?
No, there isn't.
Okay, that brings us to item number 6, please.
6, agenda forecast.
Because of the upcoming holiday, there's the scheduled meeting on 9/1 is currently canceled. So the next meeting is on October 3rd.
So, Madam Clerk, I wonder if you would work with Mr. Zern to pick an alternative day in September, if one is possible, and then poll the commissioners by email and find out availability, and we'll explore whether that's an appropriate thing to do. Otherwise, we'll just hold that meeting in abeyance and move on. I actually don't have any recommended changes to the October meeting.
No, I have none.
So I think we will go ahead and approve the agenda forecast without amendment. And that brings us on to item number 7.
7, adjournment.
Commissioners and everyone who's in the audience, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise and let's observe a moment of silence for in memory of Mr. Ray Notario. So once again, our condolences go out to the family of Mr. Notario and all his friends and colleagues. We thank him for his years of service to the utility and his family for the sacrifices that they made to make that possible. And at this point, I think it would be appropriate to recognize a motion to adjourn this meeting in his memory. Is there a motion?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. So without objection, Madam Clerk, say that we are adjourned.
We adjourn.